Welcome back to Obscure Star Wars EU, and today we're taking a look at 3 separate books. I've been really excited about doing this video for a while now, and finally, as of today, I got the last book in. I've had the others for a while now, but I've been very excited to make this video. And what are we going to be talking about today? Well, we're going to be talking about the short stories in the Prima Guides. And so I have 3 Prima Guides because there are 3 Prima game guides that tied into and gave walkthroughs of the video games. It would tell you secrets, stuff you didn't know, statistics, stuff about the weapons, controls, level guides, etc. Really everything you need to know about the game. And it's very, very cool. But additionally, in not all Star Wars Prima game guides, because there's a Prima game guide for like every Star Wars video game, but in 3 of them, there were short stories included. And this is well known for 2 of them. 2 of them are well known to have short stories. But the third, I don't really see anyone talk about, oh, this guide had a short story in it. I really don't see anyone talk about it. But thanks to my friend Luke Van Horn, who was responsible for the last Obscure Star Wars EU video, he told me that a short story existed in another Prima guide. Because we were talking about it, and I was like, oh yeah, there's the 2 Prima Guides of short stories. But he told me about this third one, and it blew my mind, because I was like, there's only 2. But lo and behold, there's more than that. Now, something does irritate me about the Prima Guides, and that's that they're all different sizes. So they don't fit together very nicely on a shelf. But this is the first one we're going to be looking at. The Star Wars Republic Commando Prima Official Game Guide. It's pretty thin, and here's the spine. And the back cover. And taking a peek inside, it's just stuff you'd expect in something like this. Level guides, telling you how to get through it. I might actually use this because I constantly get stuck in Republic Commando. Oh yeah, and I'll show these as well. There's some cool concept art that they printed in the back as well. Almost looks like a comic, the way that it's been structured, and I just think it's really, really cool. They've got like stills and concept art and I guess ideas for levels. It's very, very cool. I think there's one more page. Maybe not. I think there is one there. Nope. Yeah, so 3 pages in the back with some really cool art. Really, really neat. And then this is cool too. In the back there's a promotion for the novel tie-in, which is really cool. I love how they would advertise each other in the various different forms of media back in the day. You know, like for Knight Errant, for example, the back of one of the Dark Horse issues, it had a preview of the novel, and then in the novel itself there was printed a preview of the comic. Really, really neat. And likewise with Republic Commando here, it's promoting itself. Very nice art printing there, but the reason we're here is for, of course, the short story. And this short story is, I'd say it's a pretty well-known short story. A lot of people have covered it. Other Star Wars Expanding Universe YouTubers have covered it, talked about it. You can find readings of it. Marcel does an amazing job narrating this short story on his channel. I think Callum Johns has a live reading of it as well as it's archived on his website. And you can read the archive of this on StarWarsTimeline.net as well. But that's The Tale of the Iwapod right here. It's a 1-page short story. So this is an entirely original, exclusive short story that was only ever printed here. Very, very unique. Very, very cool. It's insane to me that they take the time to just write a prose short story in a game guide. And it just expanded the universe, right? And this is set in the ancient times. I said it at like 200,000 BBY, but it's thousands of years before the films. This has been read several times, so I won't bother reading it. But basically the story is about the ancient battles of the sea creatures in Camino, on Camino. And it tells the story of this behemoth, and he's conquering everything in the sea. He kills the great beast here. He's the king of the ocean. But he's eventually defeated by the Iwas, and the Iwas demand respect of everything in the ocean because they're smart, they work together. Despite their smaller size, they can beat anything because they're clever and they work together. And it's a really cool story, and it has some really cool ideas for like battles and stuff like that would be going on underwater amongst the ancient primeval sea creatures of Camino. I just love it. It's a great idea for a short story. What's really cool though is after it says the tale of the Iwapod at the top, it says translated from the original Kaminoan by Ryan Kaufman. So Ryan Kaufman's the author of the story, but by putting that he translated the Kaminoan language, it establishes that there's an in-universe character, in-universe, with the same name as him, that translated it. So we now know that there is a in-universe translator named Ryan Kaufman in the Star Wars universe. Very, very cool. I made a video a few months ago talking about that, and additionally Abel G. Pena, because he also canonized himself into the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Secondly, we have Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds, a Prima official guide to this game, which is a strategy game, I believe, and on the back it has some ideas of what it'll be about. Walkthroughs for every mission, strength and weakness of every unit and structure for all 6 civilizations, superior base building and combat strategies, techniques for managing resources, evolving technologies, and creating alliances, multiplayer strategies for success online, and tips on using the scenario builder. And this is the cool part right here, in a different font and highlighted so that you know it's important. Includes an original Star Wars tale. So it advertises that there's a Star Wars short story in here. I don't think this one did. No, because this one just says detailed strategies for all 3 campaigns of precise military style operations, extensive maps for every mission, comprehensive stats for all weapons and equipment, enemies exposed, a complete breakdown of each enemy's weapons and weaknesses, multiplayer tips and tactics, exclusive art gallery, a look behind the graphics. So this doesn't advertise the one-page Tale of the Iwapod short story. But this advertises its short story, and there's a good reason for it. It's a lot longer, so we'll get to that in a sec. But backing up here, this is from 2005 for this Prima guide here. This one feels very magazine-esque. Feels like an insider issue, just a little thicker. This feels more like a book. It feels thicker, and what we're going to be showing in a minute is very thick indeed. It reminds me of those For Dummies series of informational books that used to be used a lot back in the early 2000s. But this one predates this one by 4 years. This is from 2001, 2005, and just to save time later, this one's from 2005 as well, according to that. But that doesn't make sense because Galaxies wasn't out yet, was it? Okay, so Galactic Battlegrounds. In this one, which unlike this one that was full color, the other 2 are in black and white. But there is a very long short story here that takes up the entirety of Chapter 1, called Pax Empirica, The Wookiee Annihilation. And to give you an idea of just how long the story is, there is a chunk of short story to this. This is the next page. It has a screenshot of Chewbacca right there, which I thought was funny. But there is a lot of dialogue, a lot of story content to this. This deals with the Imperials and what they did to, as the name suggests, the Wookiees. And it's kind of a tragic, kind of gut-wrenching type of story. Shows Imperial atrocity and pads out the era directly following Revenge of the Sith. And explains a lot of what the Imperials were up to at this time. I think it's really cool. Just page after page. To give you an idea, it goes all the way to page 18. Yeah, so this is the last page. So in 18 pages of full, these aren't just a little bit of paragraphs. These are paragraphs. 2 columns per page. There is a lot of story content here with this, and I think it's a really cool short story. I can't remember or recall the author of this one. I don't know if it's ever been listed. It might be in the front page. I'm going to assume it was written by Stephen L. Kent, as he is the main writer credited. But there's some additional writers credited down here. But I'm going to assume that it was probably written by him. But it's a very extensive, massive short story. 19 pages. This is sizable content. So this, I'd say, for being somewhat obscure that there's a short story here, is very worth getting. And if you want a preview of what the story's like, beyond the Cliff's Notes version that I gave, you can read it for yourself on StarWarsTimeline.net. And this leads us to our final Prima Guide. This is a very thick, kind of heavier one. I'll, again, compare it. This one feels massive by comparison, but it also feels light because it's like not super high quality pages, and I love that. I love that. It has a really old book smell already that I just love. I just love it. So this is the Prima Guide for Galaxies: The Total Experience. The Total Experience is when they bundled the base game with an Empire Divided here, and then added on Rage of the Wookiees and Jump to Lightspeed as well. Now, this doesn't have Shadows of Obi-Wan. I think that's the last one. There may have been one other one, but here on the back, it advertises that there's new combat upgrade covered, new mechanics explained, and new skills described. Maps and tactics for exploring every new Kashyyyk zone. Tips for succeeding in asteroid mining, new weapon and creature stats, covers an Empire Divided, Jump to Lightspeed, and Episode 3, Rage of the Wookiees. Very, very neat. This one, you have to get the Total Experience Guide if you want the short story. If you get the original Galaxy's Prima Guide, from my understanding, it won't have the short story in it. But like the Republic Commando one with the Tale of the Iwapod, this doesn't advertise its short story as being in here. Which I guess makes sense. When this is a 19-page short story, you're going to advertise it on the back as a draw. When it's a one-page short story, you're probably not going to advertise it. Now, this has more to this short story than the Tale of the Iwapod. So it's wild that this one is overlooked and almost never talked about that there's a short story in here. Like, I don't see any channels really discussing this. And yet, everyone talks about the Tale of the Iwapod, but not really this, which I think is interesting. At least I didn't know about it until Mr. Luke Van Horn told me about it. Now, up here, it's going to credit the writer of the short story, Clone Relics Introductions by Neil Influenza Stweta, SWTA Terrell. So Neil Terrell, and that's his like on-screen Galaxy's name, I suppose. He wrote the short story. So they got a fan to write the prose short story, which is so cool. Like, Lucasfilm used to give so many opportunities to fans to be involved. I mean, they got to name Darth Kaitis. They got to submit articles. They got to design an alien with the Galaxy magazine. They got to submit short stories for the Adventure Journals. Just so, so, so cool. And man, like, I yearn for a time like that. Just so, so cool. So, all the way to page 85. And on this page, the Clone Relics quest. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read this entire thing because it's not really talked about. So I figured I'd read this one. First, we get a little bit of an introduction. So, it says, the Clone Relic quests begin all over the various worlds of the game. They'll teach you a lot about galactic history and bring you into contact with some very familiar characters. While the quests are related, they're each separate. You don't need to finish them in any special order. Since these are secret missions, we don't want to give away any spoilers. Just trust us, it's worth it to be on the lookout for them. We knew we wanted to introduce you to them, but we also knew that because of their unique nature and place in the lore, we didn't want to give away any big spoilers. This fiction piece, they call it a fiction piece, the short story, by a dedicated Star Wars Galaxies player, seemed like the ideal compromise. Enjoy. So this is what Terrell wrote. And it's the Explorer's Guide to the Clone Relics. And it has an in-universe author listed as well. It's written by Corin Fihun of Tarquinus server. I believe that's an in-universe character, or meant to be at least. We have some screenshots from the game throughout. And again, I'll just show all the screenshots first before reading the story. And it goes for 1, 2, 3, I believe 4 pages. So it spans page 86 to 90, and then that screenshot there. So a fair chunk for this short story, I will say. This was regarding secret missions. So all of these missions were like you'd have to explore around and really stumble around the game, it sounds like, to come across them. They were special little side quests. And so it's really cool that we get short stories about these side quests. So, The Explorer's Guide to the Clone Relics by Corin Fahin of Tarquina server. Bestine Cantina, one of the last places in the Outer Rim you'd expect to find an explorer claiming to hold the secret to a cache of relics from the war which saw the rise of the Empire. Of course, he's probably a con artist, looking to make a few credits from the local historical museum. That's why I've been sent to meet him. A junior clerk, no unique skills, my time worth very little, and won't be missed, following wild goose chases like this. He claims to be Corellian, which doesn't lend him favor in my eyes. I've never met a Corellian who wasn't a braggart or a thief. And what's he doing on this rock of a planet, thousands of parsecs from his home? Surely he could find a higher price for his wares in the core worlds. I enter the cantina as instructed, and eye the room for my subject. It's hard to see in the dim light. It's high noon, and the full fury of Tatooine's two suns makes it impossible to see indoors after you've been exposed to the outdoor light. Most Bestine citizens are wisely asleep or deep underground where it's cool. Though jealous of their comfort, this fact does not make my job easier. In fact, the Corellian happens to be the only human in the cantina, slowly sipping an ale in the corner while a cleaning droid makes its rounds. The man has a silly, lopsided grin on his face, clearly enjoying my discomfort. As I take his seat next to him, the bartender drops a mug in front of me, Viserion brandy from the smell of it, and walks to a back room giving us privacy. I size up the Corellian, though I've never had an eye for interpreting much based on appearance. He seems the mixed stereotype, a ragged explorer and soldier, face weathered from long days under a beating sun, outfit simple, a blaster at his side, and something in his eye. Perhaps wisdom, or a belief in that religion called the Force? Yet he seems youthful, definitely in the better half of his life, as if his toughness comes not from a long life, but from one started earlier than most. I clear my throat. So, Mr. Fahin, where do we begin? He chuckles and slowly lifts something from a bag in the chair next to his. He drops the object in front of me without speaking a word. It's a DC-15 carbine, used by the Republic Army during the Clone Wars. I try to hide my shock behind an aura of authority. You do realize that owning such a weapon is illegal under Imperial law? I stammer. You could be sentenced to death for owning this. He chuckles again. He seems to enjoy this small show of amusement. He speaks, the first words he's uttered since I arrived. It's a simple request. Don't you want to know where I found it? I want to know, and he wants to tell. It appears there's something to this Corellian. I take a sip of the brandy and settle into my seat, eager to hear his tale, how he ran into this relic of the Clone Wars. It seems the carbine isn't the only treasure he's found. And this leads us to our next section, which is called The Imprisoned Geonosian. And so it begins. He begins his tale. I once met a Geonosian on a planet filled with slaves and slavers. Seems this fellow was a researcher, there to study the local population. I know, I've never heard of a Geonosian interested in anything but war either. But there you have it. But trouble followed his every step, and it wasn't long before he wound up on the wrong side of the local law, and was placed in prison. I met him because I too was placed in the same prison, but that doesn't matter. Now, don't get me wrong, I ain't a fan of those bugs since that stunt they pulled with the Confederation, but his story had some credibility, and heck, I've got a soft heart, so I helped him out. I had to travel from one side of the galaxy to the other to clear his name, but in the end, my reward was a lifelong companion where I never expected one. So you helped free him? I prompt. When did I say the Geo was the companion? He retorts with a chuckle. I concede the point and wonder what it was he earned from the insect. And so one of the previous screenshots was a screenshot of the Geonosian. Now, the guy who has meeting Mr. Fahin, Mr. Corin Fahin, the Corellian, in this bar Bestine Cantina, the screenshot is of a Rhodian coming up to him. So I believe the first person that we're reading this from is from the Rhodian talking to the Corellian. So it's a Rhodian who's gone into the bar to talk to this Corellian who's telling him about some cool artifacts he found. So very, very cool idea for a short story. I'd also like to pause here and say I love stuff where there's like nicknames for species. He calls a Geonosian a Geo, which is interesting. I can't recall if we heard that used before, but just nice detail. So the story continues with the next section, A Fallen Hero. It was shortly after that I found myself in a party hunting sludge panthers. If you don't know what those are, don't ask. We found our way to a local cantina, and over a number of drinks I made a friend, whose name is unimportant. My friend was, he acknowledged, a clone, a soldier from the old wars, body slowly dying on him, despite medical and mechanical enhancements. I helped him with a problem, and he gave me something I'll forever treasure. I gasp. His armor. Or a piece of it. He gave you a piece of his armor! I can barely contain my excitement. Such a relic would fetch an emperor's ransom. I never said that. Another chuckle. Here, have another drink. We aren't done yet. And this armor is really cool. This is depicting this old clone who's ancient and dying and crumbling away. Very cool, very visceral. I love that. The next section is not partners, associates. That gun in front of you. He motions at the counter where the gun still rests. That gun was a gift from the depths of this planet, given by a man more powerful than you could possibly imagine. Why he chooses to spend his time here in the court of such a disgusting beast is beyond me. But I assisted him with a special problem he was having, and he gave me that gun. So you were partners with this man? Not partners, associates. He'd have killed me had I asked to be partners. I gulp and look to change the subject. Death has always bothered me. Does the gun still function? He nods. Killed a man with it as soon as I got it. And that isn't the only blood it's seen. This screenshot shows Boba Fett. Which follows to The Great Hunter. He pauses, thinking his next words over. I met another man on this blasted planet. Self-proclaimed greatest hunter of all times. Though what he was hunting in the middle of a cantina, I'll never know. I couldn't stand the man's bragging. That kills me listening to stuff like that. So I challenged him to prove I was his equal. I equaled him all right, and bested him at that. Sure, he knew how to handle a rifle, but not in the way I learned. Not a soldier's way. What did you do? I prod. Slew a terrible beast. One that had eluded the great hunter himself. Such a horror it was. He stopped short. I prompted him to continue. It was the first terror I'd felt since I was a child. I nearly fled in panic at the sight of the creature. What was it? He becomes defensive. Why? So you can look its name up in an encyclopedia? Witness its might through a holographic replay? Would that make you feel courageous? What right have you to know its name? I'm the one who killed it, and I'll decide who I share my secret with. How many men could stand up to such a creature and have a mere shimmer of hope of defeating it? You sound like that hunter, I reply softly. He hears me, though, and chuckles again. You're right, he replies. I sigh relieved. But I still can't tell you its name. It still gives me nightmares. If you want to know, you'll have to find the hunter. Maybe you'll be up to the challenge. Maybe you'll be up to his challenge as well. Me? Womp rats are enough to give me the chills. I really like this short story. I found the first time I read it that the Rhodian character is really fun. Really, really fun. I like that he's timid. We have so many brave characters in the EU and in Star Wars, so yeah, let's get a coward in there. It's great. I love it. Now, what's interesting is the Great Hunter seems to be Boba Fett, or implied to be Boba Fett. So it's kind of weird that this random Corellian pirate in a bar, Corran Fahin, is able to defeat him like this. I don't know how to feel about that this guy has maybe been implied to best Boba, but it's interesting lore. So continuing on, the next section is the star map. I decided I needed a vacation after that monster. I hypered to the Naboo system, intent on visiting the Imperial Palace and a few local landmarks. But I ran into a few friends along the way. Our chat was short, and left me crashed into the southern regions of one of Naboo's moons. Ronnie? Something like that. Anyways, I wasn't the only person having ship trouble. I found a crash site on my way to the nearest starport, no more than a click away. Inside was a map such as I had never seen. Can't tell you what was on it. Belonged to a great pirate king, who conveniently happened to be vacationing in the very city where I ended up. He paid me to track down the other pieces of the map, and conveniently enough, gave me some spare parts to fix up my ship. I slowly shake my head. Geonosians, clones, a cocky hunter, a man more powerful than I could possibly imagine, now a pirate king? It sounds a little incredible, despite what you've showed me. And it does. Oh, it gets better, he assures me. This ought to be good. And it shows what looks to be a Fiorin, I think. The hunter here is outside. A Fiorin, it looks like to me. But yeah, interesting. The next section is Fist of the Empire. Next, you're going to tell me you worked for the Emperor himself, I tease. Almost, but not quite. Apparently, I'm not too far off the mark. But I did find something of interest to an important Imperial on the planet where I found that Geo. Ever hear of the Sisters of the Night? I nod. Who hasn't? The Witches of Dathomir, wild bands of women said to control the elements from atop their Rancor mounts, slaughtering any traveler unlucky enough to find his way to that dreadful planet. Terrifying. I shudder. The sisters leave many corpses in their wake, and I just so happened to find one valuable enough to land me a new starfighter. Well, I wouldn't call it new, but it beat the piece of junk I was flying. And you got this from an Imperial officer? And another chuckle. Call him an officer to his face and you'd find yourself dead. But yes, from a member of the Empire. So don't expect to find anything if you're a member of the rebellion. Why would I be that foolish? Honestly, working as a junior clerk at a backwater museum is enough responsibility for me. Watch your mouth, he replies. The story isn't finished yet. And it shows some Force ghosts here. And Darth Vader, implying that Vader is who Mr. Fahan, I forgot his first name, Mr. Corin Fahan was working for Vader. Very interesting. On to the final page in the second last paragraph, in the second last subsection, which is called To the Queen's Aid. Remember that vacation I had planned? I finally got back to it, and ran into a member of the Naboo royal family, with a problem. Who? Naboo has a long tradition of female rulers. Does he mean the Queen? Or a relative? Queen Amidala? No chuckle this time, he roars with laughter. Don't get the news very often out here, do ya? Amidala hasn't ruled Naboo in decades. No, not Amidala. But this person is every bit as beautiful as Amidala was. He blushes. Affection, perhaps? Could he have known Amidala? No, he's much too young. Anyways, this person had a few friends in trouble, and asked me to help out. Royalty kills me. So much power, but they're helpless to assist a friend in need. I was contacted through channels the Empire would love to know about. Let's just say these contacts were more than a little rebellious. I solved the royal problem, no sweat, and made out with this beautiful piece of machinery. He places a hologram projector on the counter. A ship of beauty such as I have never seen is displayed in the air ahead of me. I'm exasperated. Is that? He grins, obviously proud of the ship. One of a dozen at most still roaming the galaxy. Beautiful, isn't she? I can't find the words to tell him I agree, but he seems to understand anyway. And we get a picture of what I assume is the current queen of Naboo. I like that detail regarding how news doesn't get out to Tatooine very often, which we know to be the case, but hilarious that long after Amidala's death and long after she resigned from being queen, there's people who still suspect that she might be queen, because Tatooine's a backwater world, word doesn't get around. So, final section, Passing of the Torch. I can sense the story has drawn to a close. So, cough. Mr. Fahan, do you truly intend to sell these things to our museum? My pulse quickens and I begin to speak rapidly. Because if so, the people of Bestine will forever be in your debt. I cannot begin to explain how much this would... He cuts me off with a wave of his hand. Such power behind that wave, as if an unseen force made me stop talking. Interesting. No, I'm not going to sell my trophies. I'm going to give them to you, on one condition. Name it! This is too good to be true. Follow in my footsteps, with your memory as guide. Find the places I've spoken to you about, and speak with those I came into contact with. Meet their challenges, assist in their troubles, exceed their expectations as I did, and you can have what is mine. That's all I ask. Of course, something I can't do. But I'm just a clerk at a museum. I know nothing of hunting, or clones, or imperial law, or witches, or another wave of the hand. Quiet. You can and will accomplish this task. Every person has the power to change the universe if he so chooses, and you're being asked far less than that. Take your first steps into a larger world, and you'll find yourself with power and resources you never dreamed of. Why do I suddenly feel so bold, so full of energy and hope? I grab a paper from his outstretched hand. It's a starship deed, to a freighter I assume is the one he crashed on Rory. In a daze, I set down my drink, nod at the Krellian, and make my way to the starport. Perhaps he's right. Maybe I can do this, but I see things clearly now. Dying on a faraway planet, on a mission over my head, and beyond my capabilities. Surely such a fate is no worse than working as a junior clerk at an ancient historical museum on the forgotten world of Tatooine. So that is the short story about the exploration of clone relics from galaxies. Very, very cool. I like that the Corellian is implied to be Force sensitive there. Of course, there's a lot of characters in Star Wars that are Force sensitive, but regardless, very cool short stories. So we have the 1-page Tale of Iwapod, the 19-page Pax Empirica, the Wookiee Annihilation, and the 4 or 5-page, I think it's 4-page short story about exploration of clone relics. Very, very cool. Very, very great short stories. This is important EU content, in my opinion. I really think that Expanding Universe fans should go out and get these because they're really neat, and it just shows how expansive the EU is, that it just had material published for it in so many sources. I just think it's so, so cool. But that's about all the time I have for today. Let me know in the comments, do you have any of these Prima Guides? If not, would you like to get them? It's really cool that they put some short stories in some of them. And let me know in the comments if there's any other Prima Guides with a short story or a scrap of story material here or there. I don't think there's any more, but who knows, there might be. So I might need to make an addendum in a few years. If there's some paragraph in the bottom corner of a page of some other Prima Guide, it would be great. I'd love to be forced to correct myself later on. But that's about all the time I have for today. See you next time on Obscure Star Wars EU, where we'll be delving into the picture books. See you then.